one of these survival hooks in your life that like has its teeth sunk into you, one of these is going to cause you to hit rock bottom burnout. And this is how I learned what happened in my life. So it's one of these 4 survival instincts, and it will absolutely break you if you don't break it first, because your type potentially is the reason that you are going to have what I call a category 5 burnout event. And it has its eye trained on you. And I want to teach you how you can prevent this kind of awful burnout. Like without a doubt, you have to know, even if these things seem obvious, because actually the 4 instincts are obvious, but, and you may think you already know what yours is, but if you don't identify it, because we all have sort of a primary one and then we have secondary ones, it will break you. And I'm speaking from experience. So the way that I learned about mine was this rock bottom event, right? Because I didn't know necessarily what to do. I kind of knew what mine was, but I didn't know what to do with it. And if I had known what I know now that I have studied and researched and put together, everything would have been different. Everything. And it took me years of like recovering and researching and learning all of this stuff. And, that was kind of my healing process to pick myself back up from just total devastation. So when I learned mine and I learned how to interrupt it and change it, it changed everything. So after learning, like, look at this right now. I would never be doing something like this. And here I am. Like, this is terrifying. I don't even know if it's actually live because I'm a total tech disaster. So it may be, it may be not. So I may be posting this later, not live. So I'll leave all the mistakes in there anyway. Oh wait, I think I see a chat. So, okay. Anyway, so why is this important for you? You need to identify which of these 4 things is your survival instinct that has the potential to break you and take you down this path and this trajectory, because that's almost what happened to me. And I don't want you to have to go through this because it's really bad. It's really, really bad. And you need to know if you identify with one of these 4, 1,000%, because that'll be your sort of primary. And then you may identify with some others, but you need to know your dominant, right? So if you know this, then you will 1,000% avoid this kind of awful burnout, the burnout that like wrecks your health and your careers and your relationships, because you will see the signs. That's the point. You will forecast, right? This sort of category 5 hurricane level event. And it's coming straight at you. If any of the signs that I'm going to explain to you are happening, it's just a matter of how powerful and how long and how high the storm surge is going to be and how awful the winds are. You can interrupt it and you can prevent it if you know how to forecast this kind of thing. And, I'm using this metaphor. I used this in my dissertation because for me, in my experience, that's what it was like. It was like a legit Cat 5. And I'm Texan, so I'm using like Texas imagery. I was a kid and I lived through Hurricane Allen. That was really, really bad. And then I was in Miami for a couple years and we had some there. And these are scary. And that's all I can think about. Like I'm visualizing myself on one of those long stretches of deserted beachfront in Padre Island. And hold on, I need a sip. And I'm standing there and I'm like totally alone. It's desolate. And I imagine myself like buried in this wet sand up to my knees and I can't get out. I'm absolutely stuck 1,000%. There's nobody around to help me. There's no resources. I am just on the shore and I have zero help. And I'll talk about in another live why that happens, how you get entirely left alone with no resources. So that's another thing. But, And actually, my pod that just dropped yesterday is on burnout. And so I'm addressing some of this stuff. So go check out the latest pod, and it talks about burnout and goes into way more detail about some of this stuff. But, without knowing my survival identity that I'll show you in just a minute, I want you to know why this is important. That's why I'm giving you some context. My Cat 5 hurricane event was like staring me down while I was trapped on the shore with nothing to protect me. And I was looking down the barrel of basically the dirty side of a hurricane. And if you know what that is, that's that top left quadrant that is the absolute most destructive and causes the most damage when it hits. It has, the highest velocity, the highest speed, winds, the highest storm surge. And that's what often gets what blindsides you, right? You don't see it coming, and all of a sudden, bam, coconuts to the face. So, if any of this sounds like you, drop some stuff in the comments. What are your responses and reactions to these kinds of, and they're all different, right? You've got different cats of hurricanes. You could have a 1 or a 5 or even more than that. There's no limit, which is scary. There's no limit to like the amount of speed a Cat 5 plus hurricane wind can be. There's no limit. It's like, it can go on and on and on. Like, it can just get worse. That's the problem. So, without knowing my identity and my type, which I'll show you in a minute, I would never have been able to sort of recover from this. And you have zero control over the converging forces once you are staring down the barrel of that Cat 5. There's no stopping it. There's no slowing it down once you're in it, especially when you don't know how to use tools and resources to interrupt it and to potentially avoid it or at least slow it down. That storm surge, it's already rising when you're in the middle of it. You start to feel like you're drowning. You have no control if it's going to just come up to your neck or if you're going to be like totally submerged. And the devastating winds, they were beating the crap out of me. I mean, I get this visceral image, right, of just being trapped there and nowhere to go and no storm shelter. The evacuation routes are already impassable and I can't get there anyway. Zero protection. And I've tried everything. And see, this is the point. And this is what frustrates me the most. And maybe you can relate to this, but all I ever got when I asked for help in the midst of like the high emotion of the stress of burnout, change your mindset, fix your mindset, suck it up, like all these platitudes. And look, mindset is great. It is. Of course it is. But it will not help you when you're getting hit in the face by a Cat 5 burnout event level. It will not help you. It's too late, And the problem I have with this kind of stuff is that you're kind of, the onus is put on you, right? It's like, oh, well, it didn't work because you didn't, use the right framework for my specific mindset. And it's like, no, that stuff's great when things are calm, but it's not going to help. You can't put your head down and suck it up when you are in that kind of level of sort of violent circumstances, right? And so I feel like I'm standing there rooted to the shore, screaming affirmations and, mindset strategies into the Cat 5 hurricane. And that hurricane doesn't care. It's not slowing down. It doesn't care what mindset I have or what affirmation I have. It is going to wipe me out. So getting up and, waking up and putting on a good mindset or whatever, that's not going to help this. That's not going to help this. And so that's what I learned really, really quickly, because when it gets real real quick. And you need like evidence-based practices to interrupt, to get out, to uproot yourself, to slow the storm. And so that's what I think a Cat 5 burnout event, as I call it, is like. You have no control over these converging forces, the strength, the velocity of the storm's power, the height, the force, the depth of the storm surge, whether or not you're even going to drown, and the sheer catastrophic devastation that the winds will create. It will devastate your future, your career, your relationships, your health, and all the things that you've worked so hard for, everything that you love. And this is what's at risk if you can't identify this survival instinct type and then figure out how exactly to address it. Because it will break you if you don't break it first. And so that's what we're here to do. You need to learn to counter it. You need to learn to interrupt it. You need to learn to, fight back for your survival and what is yours and what you love. That's why all of this is that important, because I do not want you to experience what I experienced. And it was bad. I mean, yeah, Cat 5 burnout event level. I don't want you to go through that. During my sort of recovery from all of this, I had to know the why. I had to know the how, like, why did this happen? How did this happen? And how can I fix it? And how can I help other people not to go through this? So I threw myself into research and learning. And that's what led me to getting my doctorate and writing a dissertation on this, all of these particular themes around what happened to me. And it was a real healing process, but not everybody has resources like that or finds, joy in that. And you have to have a healing process towards recovery. But anyway, I say all this to give you some context, because if you don't have that evacuation process ready prior to, it's not going to help. And that is ultimately later what's really saved me and got me out of that. But, discovering what I now identify as 5 converging forces that create this sort of perfect storm that can go from, a Cat 1 to a Cat 5, depending on the level of these 5 converging forces, we can forecast now. See, this kind of stuff, it's exactly like weather, which is why I love the metaphor, because we can forecast it. You can say, oh, well, this and this and this come together and it's going to be this level or this, that, and the other. And I've identified 5 things through my research and also all of my surveys. I did lots of research with other women that experienced this kind of stuff. We are all having the same stuff happening. And that's good news, because it means it's preventable, which means if I'd known this stuff, it would have been unnecessary and preventable suffering I could have avoided. So I don't want that perfect storm happening in your life. So we have to take preventative measures, which is the whole goal. And, that's a huge part of my scope and sequence of teaching, is teaching you this entire structure, this sort of infrastructure of how to forecast this stuff. And just a quick caveat, I am working on this right now. And I would love to know if any of this speaks to you. Does this metaphor speak to you? Would you like to know what those 5 converging forces are? Do you want to know how to learn to foresee and predict so that, when stuff starts to get difficult, whether it's at, a dysfunctional job or a passive aggressive relationship, or you're dealing with, gaslighting coworkers, the infrastructure works for all of this. Is that something you'd like to learn about? Because if not, I don't want to put a lot of time in it. I have an entire burnout course I'm about to build. I have a whole thing on the structure. So drop in the comments if this is something you would like to learn about, or if not, what would you like to learn about? Because I'm going to shift my direction that way. I don't want to, waste your time if this isn't helpful, but this is like what I'm processing right now and what I'm working on. So I've got a quiz that you can take to find out these instincts. Just go to charliehornisscoaching.com/quiz to figure out what your dominant one is. And you're going to get a free cheat sheet from me, just some sort of like basic information and steps, some actionable tools that you can start using now in order to start to prevent this stuff and forecast it, right? Because you don't want to get in the middle of this. So that's the first step that I'm working on. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of kinks and stuff, because again, I'm literally testing this now, trying to get some info out there, get some feedback to see if it's helpful, what are the tech problems. So run over there and find it. I'm uploading different cheat sheets, so you may get one now, but there'll be another one later I can forward to you. So anyway, charliehornisscoaching.com/quiz. Go find that out. So here is what these things are. And if you don't know the neurobiology behind all of this, you're not going to be able to prevent anything. That's why this is not, a mood or vibe. This is actually real science. So here are the 4 types. I know you know them, most likely, but we're going to get like in the weeds with them really well. So obviously it's fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? I'm sure a lot of you chose, you answered that yourselves, but I've put them into some categories of animal survival instincts, because animals actually are the best way to talk about what these things do in the moment, because you will just watch an animal react, right? If you've ever watched a nature show with the gazelles that are being chased by lions, and how they run or they stop and freeze and like camouflage, because they've in seconds, their brain is determined whether they can get away, they can win a battle, or they have to stand there and hope that nobody sees them. And then if they get away, if they're running, afterward, they shake off. You see them shake. And what they're doing is shaking off their neurotransmitters. And humans don't really do a lot of that. And we're also always kind of in a high stress environment. So it's not so, cut and dry. It's like, oh, there's the lion. It's chasing me. And I escaped. And so now I'm going to shake off the neurotransmitters and go about my day. Like, we don't do that. We're in like weird passive aggressive gaslighting. And we're kind of like always on hypervigilance and always looking around the corner for, my favorite metaphor, Bob in accounting, to come in and give me his unsolicited, criticism that is, camouflaged as feedback, which I don't want to hear anyway. So that's why I'm using these. So anyway, so the fight is actually the lion. The lion needs to understand that, they pop off, or they, if people aren't getting stuff done, they're like, nobody else is going to do this. I'm going to have to do this. And they take on a whole bunch of responsibility. And the problem is that the fire that they have that causes this like fight in the moment can turn entirely self-destructive if you don't know how to sort of redirect it. And they don't burn out from weakness. They burn out from feeling like they're always fixing and fighting everything alone because other people won't step up. That's one of the huge things. So understanding the chemistry that's driving the lion's reactions, that's what's called adrenaline fatigue leadership. And whether that's in personal life or that's in business, and it will take you out. So go see if you're a lion. The next one is flight, but I like to talk about the deer. They're really good at, if you ever, again, go watch some like documentaries on the survival instincts of these animals. It's really interesting. And the deer can get called too sensitive. They're constantly on high alert mode. Their nervous system is just like tired. And so the deer ghost, right? And sometimes they ghost themselves and they're not flaky. They ghost because they're doing something called buffering, which is like anything they can do to tamp down the discomfort of whatever the circumstance is around them. And then their cortisol spikes in silence. And, their burnout doesn't come from, running away and doing nothing and sitting at home, introverted. It comes from disappearing on yourself and then being left alone because the circumstances are that difficult, and managing your brain is going to fix that. And if you don't catch this now, your vanishing will go totally unnoticed. Nobody will notice because you're not there. And that's not a way to survive. The next one is the fox. This is fawning. Fawning is people pleasing, basically. And so that's a newer instinct that our psychologists have come up with, and neuroscientists, because I'm not really sure you can people please lions out in the wild, but we can today. Again, Bob in accounting for me seemed like a lion that was going to eat me every day, right? My cortisol spiked and I thought I was in danger, even though I wasn't. And so people pleasers, right? They feel, or sometimes they're told they're fake, or they shapeshift, but you shapeshift for survival. Like somewhere along the way, you learned that it wasn't okay to push back. You learned that. Your brain learned that, whether you know that or not. And so you don't do it because you know it's not safe. Your brain won't let you do it. Again, all of this is like external, like you can control this stuff. I'll show you how. But this mask, it's choking your voice because you think it's not safe. Your brain's telling you that. And you don't burn out from, 1,000 micro appeasements necessarily. It's the continued saying yes just to avoid disapproval that will wreck your self-confidence. And so we have to interrupt that. If you don't understand the neurochemicals that hit your brain to make you feel this way, like you have to keep the peace or everything falls apart, then it's going to be a really hard time to avoid this kind of burnout, because you're going to get tired of saying yes constantly when you mean no. And, you're going to lose your identity. It will gut your identity. Okay. And the last one is the owl. This is the freeze response. And the owl, you're not indecisive. You're bracing for a blow. Something in your story has told you that conflict is bad, is dangerous, and you can't really get involved, even if you don't understand that, like in your brain consciously. And you don't freeze because there's something wrong with you. And lots of people that are in my owl circle. Did you know, by the way, a group of owls is called a parliament? So my owl parliament circle. And by the way, I mostly identify with an owl, but I have tendencies for all of them, like I'm sure many of you do. So many think there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with you. Even though you blank, even though you don't come up with, the best comeback, even though you're home ruminating all night long about the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I say that? Because you can't remember how to say what it is that you've practiced for 2 years, how to say, again, Bob in accounting comes in and sideswipes you with his lovely 2 p.m. criticism. And it's coming. And yet you get frozen every time. And then you go home and beat yourself up for it. That's your brain. That's not you. That can be fixed. It can be fixed. Your body goes bananas when you feel that hint of conflict, right? Your heart rate jumps. Your body kind of turns into a live wire. You feel everything. You're hyper aware, and it feels awful, but it's not your fault. And managing your brain for all of these can fix all of this, because you have to understand what the neurotransmitters are doing in your body. If you don't understand your freeze instinct, especially, this is where you lose credibility, because what's funny, not funny, counterintuitive, like everything I teach, the people that are causing you to feel the conflict that's creating your brain's shutdown into the freeze instinct are the same people that will think you're incompetent for freezing in the first place because of the circumstance that they're ginning up, which makes zero sense, but that's the reality of it. That's why we've got to fix the brain piece, or nothing's going to happen. Mindset's not going to help that when, the shit hits the fan. It's totally backward logic. You're going to lose your power behind your voice if you go into that burnout, transgression, because people have made assumptions about you because of this instinct that's only trying to save you. And we're learning these instincts today, these tribal instincts and survival instincts, they actually make our lives worse. That's why we have to manage them, right? Okay. So, all right, you've got your 4. I want you to check out the quiz to see which one you are, and then grab one of my versions of my cheat sheets, and I'm happy to email a second one, or, iterations, and get your feedback. I would love your feedback, so I can tell if this is something you guys want me to lean into, because I'm working on this currently. This is like a project and you guys can help me identify if it's helpful, what parts of it. If anybody wants to beta test any stuff, let me know, because I always have like a really inexpensive beta testing price for people to try out courses and, workbooks and stuff. You can get it, give it a try. Just give me some feedback is my only ask. But you can drop me a line, send me an email, whatever, and let me know if you're interested in beta testing any of my stuff, because I'm working on so many projects right now for you guys. So anyway, let me know if this is helpful. All right. I just want to do a real quick Q&A because I saw some stuff in the comments now that I know I'm live again. Tech disaster. All right. Okay. This is from, Jess in the margins. All right. I already know I'm a people pleaser. That's the Fawn type, right? Yes, Jess, that's the Fawn, people pleasing. How is your quiz going to tell me something new? Okay. Totally fair. Totally fair. But I knew mine going in too. I knew I was like, that's what I did. I froze in the moment. But the problem was I didn't know how to use the knowledge of knowing that to help me in sort of the storm event real time. If you don't know the like step-by-step how to interrupt this stuff and practice it so that it becomes ingrained, you're not going to be able to use it when you need it. And look, most people understand how they already react in especially the frustrating ways, because most people that, work with me are high functioning, high achievers, and you're brilliant. Your brain is brilliant. Of course, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. If you freeze, if you, want to take somebody's head off because, like instantly, and then you regret what happened. If you people please and beat yourself up every time you do it. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. What I want to tell you is the how to use that knowledge to change your life, because that's what the manage your brain piece is. The knowing is the first part. The learning to manage your brain so that you don't have to put up with this stuff and still be happy is the part where this stuff comes in. The quiz is the first step into that. You have to just identify what your dominant one is, understanding that neuroscience behind how this stuff shows up, because by the time you knock over into that space of, the threshold transgression, which is the fourth part of my scope and sequence infrastructure, it's too late. And again, my most recent podcast that dropped yesterday talks a lot about this. So this isn't about slapping a label on you. It's about decoding that exact moment when your brain flips into this instinct and how to prevent that before it happens so that you're not wrecking your health, your career, and all the relationships, And most Fawn types, like I said, you don't burn out because you're being too nice, even though everyone tells you that. You're trading your voice for what your brain thinks is safe, which is making people happy around you, also having to do with dropping dopamine. My third episode when I first started last year talks all about this, people pleasing. Go check that one out, episode 3. All right. There's a couple more. All right. At Inbox Latitude, I'm not in burnout. I'm just tired. Do I actually need this? Okay. Yeah, because the person who waits until they're in burnout, in full blown burnout, this stuff I'm talking about that like wrecks your life, you can't do anything at that point. It's too late. So this is all preventative work, right? Again, if I'd known this, I would have prevented unnecessary and preventable suffering in my life and wouldn't have had to spend 10 years researching and understanding. And, of course I ended up doing stuff and I'm very happy, but I learned this stuff and it changed my life like almost instantly. So the point is that I teach you, since I'm using storm metaphors, to, excuse me, become a meteorologist, if you will. Again, go with my terrible illustrations here. Again, I'm a preacher. That's what we do. We are hyperbolic and we steal illustrations to make a point. Just go check out Jesus in parables. That's exactly what he did. Nothing was, original. But telling stories helps. And that's what happened to me when I saw this as a storm system, right? I was able to see it systemically, because what's happening is not us. It's not our fault. Even if we screw stuff up, like you're human, you should be able to screw stuff up and you shouldn't be yelled at by Bob in accounting, right? Like, who is he? That's not okay. this is a system. Everyone has been immersed in it their whole lives. They've been trained to treat each other like this, have expectations, get mad at people, and then be totally, a hypocrite because they're doing the same stuff or similar. Like, are you going to tell me you're not perfect? Yeah. You're perfect? No, you're not. We're all a mess. Everybody's a mess. Why do you think you get to yell at people? So you can prevent all of this stuff once you understand it's not you. You don't get to take responsibility for this. You don't get to sit around and say, oh, I'm terrible. This is all my fault. It's not your fault. It's not terrible. There's solutions. If you want to know, go take the quiz. You don't need to wait until it's too late, because that's what's happening. So you're going to learn to become a meteorologist, a storm tracer. You're going to read the weather map. You're going to be able to identify those converging forces and forecast what level of storm is heading your way. And if it's heading your way or if it's veering off in another direction, because you were able to, counter it with your own converging forces and make it go another direction with your own, wind, like the front coming in from the north. Also, I teach 2 evacuation routes. The aerial view. That's going to teach you to stay where you are, but get the 30,000 foot view, get out of the emotion, get out of the struggle, get out of the self-blame, and look down and see the system for what it is, right? Storm system. Very different idea. If I'm looking down at the exact storm versus I'm rooted on the shore with no resources, no help, no one coming to get me, no escape plan. 2 totally different views of the same storm. And it's still systemic, right? It's a storm system. If you see the storm for what it is and you see it coming and you know all the pieces because it's forecastable, it's elements, converging forces, then you can do something about it beforehand. That's this whole idea, right? It's a system and it's outside of yourself, even with the mistakes that you make, because you're allowed, by the way, to screw stuff up. And you should. It makes you better, right? It helps you raise your level of your threshold of tolerance of discomfort. And so every time you screw up, that's a great practice to do that. So by the time you're in full blown burnout event, whatever level is converging, it's too late. And that's the level of, that threshold transgression, this level 4 of my infrastructure, where you're getting the coconuts in the face. Like, tell me how you can react with your thinking brain when you're getting smashed with coconuts in the face, right? And you can't get away. So that's a problem. But I love your question and I get it. Let's see. There was one more. I can't see the name on this one. I've already taken personality quizzes. What makes yours different? Oh, okay. So I love those, by the way. I think I've taken every single one. They're fantastic, but they're not for crisis. Okay. They're not. And you do need to know stuff about your own identity. Like, that's who you are. Like, I'm an Enneagram 6, always will be forever. And I'm learning to manage it, but it's always going to be with me. It is part of my personality. My survival instinct is not part of my personality. It is something that I learned, my brain learned to keep me safe, right? And I can unlearn that. And we can rewire our brains literally, not because of our personality, not because, I'm not Myers-Briggsing and Enneagramming you here. I am actually talking about rewiring the neural pathways that were laid years ago that your survival brain has identified as safety, which is not. It's actually messing you up because you don't live in tribal times where this stuff, you can just shake it off and move on about the day, and you live with people you've lived with your whole life in a community, and you don't have a Bob in accounting. And if you do, you've known him since he was a kid and you know what he's going to do and it doesn't bother you, right? You care, you have compassion. I didn't grow up with Bob in accounting. I don't know anything about him except he's a jerk, right? That's why I go into survival mode, because these are all unknown. And that doesn't help me deal with my problems today when I go into that, because now I'm just functioning without my thinking brain working, and that's not helpful. So that can be changed. and we can rewire our neural pathways through neuroplasticity, because your brain is basically plastic and it's moldable. So through certain practices, certain changes of your belief system, certain identifying things that happened in your life, when I went through all that work, wow, I was like, oh, that's why I do that. All right, I don't have to do that anymore, because I understand why I do it. I understand why my brain is doing what it's doing. And I totally understand how to stop it. I don't have to let that be my identity anymore. It's not my identity. I'm nothing like that person anymore. Okay. An Enneagram 6 would never do this, but because I've identified my survival instinct, which is freezing, I can just sit here and talk, and I don't care. I don't care anymore. I want to help you. This is how I help you. So the external forces and what they're doing around you right now, what your nervous system is doing under that pressure, and then how, based on your instinct type now, not the one that we change later, the one right now, it's not what you want to do, it's what you do, what your body does, regardless of all of the practicing and the elevator speeches you have in your back pocket. My elevator speech was, that's not kind. And that's a great one, because people hate to be called unkind, but I could never remember it when somebody was unkind and loud and awful. It didn't work. But now I fully see the system for what it is. I'm in that 30,000 foot view. Get in the plane with me. I'll teach you how to fly. Then you can go solo by yourself. You get it. You don't need me anymore. I'm going to teach you how to fly over that system and forecast it for yourself. And you don't need it. And you don't need anything else from that. Other than if you want to learn your Myers-Briggs, that's not going to help you in the moment. That's why there's some value in this quiz, because it's going to help you identify the survival type. And then we're going to talk about circumstances swirling around you, and then what your initial reaction is to that and how we can get better. So, what else? I told you, I'm an owl. I'm a freezer. So anyway, so as I work on this new project around this sort of Cat 5 burnout event, and I'm putting together this infrastructure and this scaffolding for teaching the stuff based in my dissertation research, and also all of the interviews I did a whole lot of human subject research, and most everybody I interviewed in, they fit a certain category that I needed. We all had the same stuff. That's how I know this is forecastable. And if it's forecastable, it's solvable. And it's true. And how do I know that? It happened to me. So I want you to go to the quiz, charliehornesscoaching.com/quiz. And also, if you just want to subscribe, it's /subscribe. And then you can find out all this other stuff that I'm always doing if you're not around for videos or whatever. So, and to learn more about burnout, go to yesterday's episode. And I forget what we called it, but totally on burnout. So, all right, that's it. And if you want to beta test anything, just drop me a line, comment, whatever, email, send me a telegram, and I will be happy to send you a code so that you can get my beta testing offer price. And it's an exchange. I give you an offer price code and you give me feedback. So that's kind of like the deal. And then I'm happy to let you try anything on my website and let me know what you think about it. So I'm going to be I've got 5 courses in the works. So once I get all those out, let me know if you want to try any of them, and I will send you that social contract code. And then you have to tell me what you think. And you have to be honest. I want to know, did you hate it? Is it not useful? Would you rather learn something else? What would you rather learn? Were there awful tech problems? So that's what I'm looking for. Okay. That's it. And all right. I'll see you later. I'm going to go enjoy my Friday. I hope you do too. Bye.